Hey, I'm finally back with another video. It's been a little over a week. I've been trying so hard to make this video, but this week I've had so much going on. Like, I've been so stressed. But anyways, that's not what this is about. So I did a poll on my Instagram about what my next video should be. The first option was Dylan's diagnosis video, and the second one was a self-care day and a chit chat or whatever. So of course the one about Dylan won. I kind of already knew that was going to happen. As soon as I made that an option, I kind of prepared myself to talk about that because I kind of knew it was going to win, because that's like the thing I get asked about the most by like family, friends, people on social media. So I kind of already had an idea that this video was going to be about that. So I got some notes about the video so that I make sure I don't leave anything out or skip over anything. I got everything listed in order. So, and I'm hoping and praying that I don't get too emotional, because this has definitely been an emotional chapter in my life, in both of our lives, and really the lives of my family and friends and stuff like that, because I definitely reach out to people and consoling them. So it's definitely been emotional. So hopefully I don't get too emotional. So anywho, we just gonna go ahead and start right off. First thing I want to talk about is Dylan as a person. So let me tell you guys a little bit about Dylan. Dylan is my sweet baby. He's my firstborn, my first son. He's an overall sweetheart. Like, I love him to death. Like, I love me some Dylan. He's 3 years old. He'll actually be 4 at the end of this month. His birthday is May 31st, 2019. He's not a pandemic baby, but he was definitely a baby during the pandemic. Let me tell you a little bit about his personality. He's very loving, very kind, very affectionate. He can get jealous from time to time. He definitely can. Overall, he's sweet, he's kind, he loves to share, he loves to play with other kids. Dylan has never really given me any problems. Like, Dylan is an overall easy child, an easy baby. Like, even with our challenges, like, he's still an easy child. With that being said, let's go ahead and get into the first time that I ever like noticed anything different about him. A lot of red flags in the autism community I actually didn't pick up on, because like I said, Dylan was my first child. I was a first time mom. So a lot of things he was doing that were considered to be red flags, I actually wasn't picking up on, because I just thought he was just being a baby. Like, I thought it was Dylan being Dylan, a 1-year-old being a 1-year-old, 2-year being a 2-year-old. Like, I didn't know these things were red flags. First thing that I actually did pick up on was speech. He was about 6, 7, 8 months. Like, he was saying your typical mama, dada, things like that. And then like a couple months later, he just completely stopped saying all of that. When I was taking him to the pediatrician and they were giving us those questionnaires where it's like, what can your baby do? What can't your baby do? And what should your baby be doing around this age? He always scored pretty low. Like, he might have been average when it came to things that were physical, but as far as speech, he always scored low. He was always below average. It became a concern to me and to the pediatrician. So they was like, we have this program in your county and we're gonna go ahead and get the referral, and they're gonna offer speech classes to him. And at this point, I'm like, okay, cool. You know, I can get him up to speed. I can get him saying some words. I can get the assistance that I need. Like, okay, let's go ahead and get this ball rolling. So they eventually reached out to me. They was requiring all this paperwork, the birth certificate, the social security, immunization records. They wanted him to take a vision screening, a hearing test. They wanted my proof of income, my proof of residency. Like, they wanted a lot. They definitely wanted a lot. But at this point, you know, I'm trying to go ahead and get things going. So everything they asked for, I'm turning in like that. I was getting everything in there pretty fast, because I really wanted him to start the services, because I wanted my baby to talk. Like, I wanted him to do the things that he should be doing, saying the things that he should be saying. Like, they was like, he should be saying 3-word sentences, and my baby wasn't really saying anything. Like, he would make noises and stuff like that, but he wasn't really saying anything. So I'm like, yeah, let's go ahead and get this ball rolling. Like, let's go ahead and get these services started. So the lady who was over his case, she reached out to me. She was like, thank you for getting everything submitted. We're going to go ahead and move on with the next step. I'll be reaching out to you within this time frame. So I'm like, okay, cool. She gave me a little time frame. Nobody reached out to me. I reached out to her. I didn't get a response. So I'm like, okay, like, I turned that paperwork over a month ago. What's going on? Like, let's go ahead and get these speech classes rolling. Like, what's the hold up? So I actually had to go over the person that was over his case, and I reached out to the program itself, and I was like, hey, you know, this person is over my son's case. He needs speech classes. Like, I done turned in everything they asked for. Like, what, you know, how do we get to the next step? They told me that she fucking quit. The lady who was over his case quit. She was new, and I guess the job just wasn't a good fit for her, and she quit. So, like, I was like, nobody picked up her cases. Like, nobody looked into what she had going on. Like, yeah, she quit, and I understand, but what about my son? That don't have nothing to do with him. So, they went ahead and got a new person on his case, and they were able to get services started pretty quickly. In this time frame, my baby is probably like 2 years and 7 or 8 months, and he aged out of the program at 3. So I'm like, well, that only gives him 4 or 5 months. Like, how is he gonna pick up on speech with only 4 or 5 months left? And speech was freaking virtual. So I was already skeptical about that. I'm like, how is my baby gonna be able to pick up speech on a computer screen? How am I gonna get a 2-year-old to sit down and pay attention to somebody talking to him on a computer? Like, how is this gonna work? Like, I was very skeptical because this was the time during the pandemic. Everyone wasn't back in office yet. So I'm like, something gotta give. So even though I was skeptical about it, it was the only thing I had going for him to improve his speech, so I still went for it. So I'm like, okay, I don't know how this is gonna work, but we're still gonna do it. So once speech classes started, he had 3 sessions a month for 30 minutes a day. And honestly, even though it was on a computer, it took him a minute to get adjusted. Like, the first time he was sitting down, he sat there for about 20 minutes, and then he got up, like, he was done. And she was like, well, you know, don't force him to come sit back down. This is his first session. He did really good. He did better than some other children that I've had. She's like, just give him a break. So eventually he started being able to sit down for the whole 30 minutes. And at that point, he was able to, like, pick up on some things. So he wasn't necessarily talking right off the bat, but he was trying to, like, sound out words and sound out the letters and things like that. So his speech therapist actually told me that Dylan could read. Mind you, my baby is like 2, 7 months, 8 months. Like, I'm like, how could he possibly read when he cannot talk? Like, what do you mean he can read? So she said that, and I kind of pushed it to the back of my head because I'm like, I don't know. I didn't really believe her. I'm just gonna be honest. I didn't believe that my baby could read. I didn't. So actually, my baby can read. He could read up here. He just wasn't able to get it out here. So, like, she had these little flashcards where she would, like, slide it and expose each letter. So she would have, like, pig, and he'd be like, pig. And I'm like, did he just say that? Or sometimes when she was reading him a book, he might skip to the next page and start reading it himself. And I'm like, is this baby really reading? And she was like, yes, Mom, I told you he could read. Like, all you got to do is be able to pull that language out of him because he got it up here. So speech, even though it was virtual, it was very, very helpful. Like, I still keep in contact with her to this day. Like, we're Facebook friends. She definitely helped me and helped him to pull some of those words out. Like, speech was not only just for him, it was also for me, because she was like, when he wants something to drink, how did he tell you? Dylan would just come up and just give me the cup, and I would go pour him some drink. She said, no, Mom, that's not what you do. You pull that language out of him. He give you the cup, you say, okay, like, what do you want me to do with this? Can I have da-da-da-da? Can I get more da-da-da-da? Like, she's like, don't try to get him to say that many words, but try to get him to communicate his needs. And that's something that I wasn't doing on my own. Like, he would just give me something, or he would do something to let me know what he wanted, but he wouldn't say it. And I wasn't making him say it until that point. Then I was making him say things. Speech went very well. Now, since she was paying attention to him, she was also paying attention to his behaviors. So this is when like things started getting a little bit concerning. So as she was watching him play, because sometimes when she did classes, she would be like, okay, bring these toys or bring something that you know he's interested in so we can try to get him to pay attention, and we can get him to say numbers and words and what objects are and things like that. So he would always have his letter blocks. My baby is obsessed with letter blocks to this day. Dylan loves letter blocks. Letter blocks, Hot Wheels. Sometimes I would take like the building blocks and just any toys that he was kind of obsessed with in the moment, or his favorite toys in the moment that he could play with during his speech session. So whenever he had his toys, he would line them up like in a perfect line. So mind you, you know, I'm thinking that's just how a kid play, but she's paying attention to it. And this is actually one of the red flags of autism. I, at the time, did not know that. So she's paying attention to how he plays, paying attention to his behaviors. And she pulled me to the side and she was like, Mom, you know, I'm gonna ask you a few questions. So she was asking me like, how does he play with his toys? She was like, I see he likes to line things up. And I was like, yeah, he always lines things up. And she was asking like, if you take him somewhere and there are other children around, does he play with the other children? And I'm like, yeah, he'll play with the other kids. And she was like, or does he play next to the other children? Dylan did that, and Dylan does that. I feel like Dylan likes having the company, but he doesn't necessarily want to play with them. That's also a red flag of autism. Like not wanting to play with kids, but playing like beside them or playing by themselves or keeping themselves entertained versus going to play group play. So that was another red flag. And I'm like, okay, at this point, she's like, well, I believe Dylan could possibly have autism. So I'm like, I had only heard of autism one other time. Somebody who I didn't even know that well and didn't even know my baby that well. They was like, Dylan's not talking. And I said, no. And it was like, is he autistic? And I was like, no. At this point, like, I didn't know what it was. So I kind of brushed it off. Like, I was a little offended because you don't really know me that well. You don't know my son that well. And you're trying to diagnose him. So I kind of like I brushed it off and I let it go. And that was that. Mind you, this was months prior to this. So when she said that, I instantly started thinking about that incident. And I'm like, I'm looking things up and she's telling me all these different signs and she's asking me all these questions. And it's like Dylan is everything that she's asking. Everything that I'm looking up relates to Dylan. So at this point, I'm like, okay, like what do we do? Like, so she was like, you need to reach out to your pediatrician and let them know that I, the speech therapist, said that he's showing some signs of autism and that he needs to be evaluated. So at this point, like I said, I'm on Google heavy. So I'm going to tell y'all some of the most common like red flags of autism. So one of the most common red flags of autism is, of course, speech. Like I said, Dylan, he wasn't saying much. He wasn't really trying to say much. He was just making sounds. So like the sounds he were making, if they are making repetitive noises or repetitive phrases, that's also a sign of autism. So my baby, he would just be like, E, like, and mind you, first time mom, I'm thinking like, this is normal. This is what kids do. But it was really a red flag that I just hadn't picked up on because I didn't know. Another thing, one of the most common ones is hand flapping. Like hand flapping, spinning in a circle, being on tiptoes. Like these are all very common red flags. These are things that people look for when they're trying to determine if a child does have autism. Mind you, these are all things that Dylan did and still does to this day. Like flapping his hands, going in circles, being on his tiptoes. Like these are things that Dylan did and still does. Another thing is obsession with like lining things up. So that refers back to those Hot Wheels, those blocks. Lining everything up in a perfect line is definitely a sign of autism. Another sign is having strong likes or strong dislikes towards textures. So Dylan, He was obsessed with my bonnet. Every night he would take my bonnet and do it in between his fingers like this until he fell asleep. Like, he would do this, and I honestly, I didn't like the sound of it, but whenever I would like take it off or take it away, he wouldn't like it. Like, he would So I had to deal with the noise just so he could be soothed at night. But like, the texture of the bonnet, he loves silk, satin, he loves things like that. Now, when he was younger, I tried to introduce Play-Doh to him, and he felt the texture of Play-Doh and was instantly disgusted. Like, I could not get Dylan to play with Play-Doh for the life of me. The texture, he just, it wasn't what he liked. He didn't like it. Also, another thing is having tags in his shirt or in his pants. Dylan would just undress himself. Like, he would take all his clothes off just because the tags or the material of the clothes was irritating him. Like, the textures, he just couldn't get over. Most kids are picky eaters anyway, but being an extreme picky eater is also a red flag or a sign of autism. So to this day, Dylan, like I said, Dylan is a sweetheart. So if I ask him to try something, he will try to try a food for me. But if he doesn't like it, he's gonna gag. Before I knew 100% that he had autism, I would try to get him to eat certain foods. And I'm like, here, to the point where I would actually get it in his mouth. Like, I wouldn't force it, but you could tell he didn't want to, but I would still try to get him to try things, and he would literally throw up. Like, after that happened one time, I was like, okay, I'm not forcing him to try anything else, because obviously it's deeper than just being a picky kid. Like, he just can't. Another red flag is self-harm. So like, Dylan, he wouldn't do like the head banging or hitting himself in the head or anything like that, but he would dig into his sores. Like, if he had a mosquito bite, he would dig into it until it bled. I remember one time he had a mosquito bite right here. He came running to me and it was blood dripping everywhere. And I was like, what is that? What happened? And I wiped it and I looked at his fingernails and he was just digging into that mosquito bite. Another sign that Dylan shows of autism is film obsession. So if you know Dylan, you know Sesame Street, Despicable Me, Cars, Encanto, and The Grinch. He will watch these things back to back to back to back. Like, he can watch a movie one time, and when he watches it again, he can say the words. Like, Dylan will say the words to a movie like he had a freaking script. So yeah, film obsession. Even now that he has an iPad and he has YouTube Kids, like, he watches the same videos back to back to back to back. And he watches the same, like, if a beginning of a video he really likes, the first 5 seconds, he watched 5 seconds, he drag it. He watched 5 seconds, he drag it. He will watch it back to back to back to back. Another red flag is having inappropriate facial expressions. So me and Dylan could be chilling, we'll be watching a little movie or something like that, and he'll just out of nowhere. And I'm like, why are you looking at me like that? Like, what did I do? Inappropriate facial expressions, that's a sign, that's a trait. Like, he can't really control that. But at that point, I'm like, dang, like, what did I do? What did I do to him? Why are you looking at me like that? Another thing that he does with his eyes, he will visually stim. So Dylan, I'm gonna show you exactly what he be doing. Dylan will look at you and then he go like this. And then he'll just go on about his business. So I'm looking things up and I finally see something about visual stimming, and I saw a video of a child doing the exact same thing. So yeah, he was just stimming visually. Like, he'll stim physically, he'll hum, he'll say the same thing over and over again to stim vocally, and he'll also stim visually. Okay, so as you guys know, I actually have 2 sons. I have 2 boys. So during this whole time where they're saying that Dylan could possibly have autism, I'm actually pregnant. So you can only imagine like the emotions that I'm already going through pregnancy. And now I'm like finding out that something can potentially be different about my baby. So I was literally everywhere, like emotional. I just didn't know what to think. My thoughts were all over the place, and this was like a really, really hard time for me. Honestly, I'm just gonna be 100% honest. It was a hard time for me because I didn't have the answers to anything. I had no answers. So I finally reached out to the pediatrician, and she said to find a place to get him evaluated. And once I did that, called them, they would send the referral to them. And once they got it, they would set up an appointment. So I'm like, where do I go to do this? I'm on Google like crazy. I'm calling all these different places. They like, we don't have no appointment to a year. We don't have an appointment to 8 months. We don't have an appointment to 6 months. We don't talk to the people directly. We only talk to the pediatrician. So I'm like, okay, what the fuck? So I reach out to his former speech therapist, because at this point he's already 3, he aged out of the program. So I'm like, I don't really know where to take him to get evaluated. Do you have any place I can go? Like, can you please help me out? I just need some help, some kind of help. So she actually gave me a place, and I called them, and their wait list was still a couple of months, but it was the shortest amount. So since this place has the shortest wait list, and it came recommended from somebody that I trust, somebody that knows Dylan, somebody that's working with Dylan, I'm like, okay, we're going to go ahead and do this. We're going to go with them. So in these couple of months that I'm waiting for him to finally be able to be evaluated, of course, I'm in my head. So I'm looking things up. I'm going crazy. And in this time frame, like I said, I was pregnant. I was already emotional, but I was able to come to terms with it. So in my head, I'm like, okay, if he is, that's fine. If he's not, that's fine. Like I had more than enough time to be accepting of whatever the answer was going to be, whatever the diagnosis was going to be, if it even was one. One thing that I did come across is I was watching somebody on YouTube, and they actually have 3 sons who all have autism. And they was like, the odds of your second child or the next child having autism, if you have one that already has it, are extremely high. So I was in my head, I'm like, is this really a good time for me to be having a baby right now? Like, I might be up against a challenge that I don't even know if I can handle. Like, how am I going to devote this attention to Dylan if I'm literally pregnant with another baby? Is this child also going to have autism? Like, I was literally in my head so fucking bad. And I have my family, I have my friends to turn to, but like, I don't really get into this too much. But when it comes to Dylan, like, I'm the only parent that does for him, period. I'm his only parent. So I kind of tried to reach out within this time, and I'm like, well, you know, Dylan may have autism and he's going to get evaluated on this. Like, I was trying to reach out to the person that I share this child with, to have a conversation, to have a sense of security, to have somebody there with me during this process. And just like always, like, I ain't gonna get into it too much, but I was alone. I was the only parent in his situation, for real, and still am to this day. But anywho, so that definitely had me emotional because I was already pregnant. I was lost. I can't even put words to match the emotions that I was feeling during that time. But anyways, like I said, I had more than enough time to come to terms with it. And by looking it up and paying closer attention to him and knowing what I'm actually looking for within him, I already knew the results. I already knew the answer. I already knew the diagnosis. Like, I knew it. So when he did finally get diagnosed, for the evaluation, they let me come. They let me go to the back, and she kind of just watched him play. Like, she had her toys already laid out. She had some glitter blocks, of course, baby doll, and I'm trying to think what else she had. She had a book, and she just had like toys where if you press the button, the character pops out. I'm pretty sure the toys she had were geared towards like maybe answering certain questions, because she was taking notes the entire time. But I just kind of sat in the corner in the chair, just watching her play with him, watching her try to communicate with him and take notes on him. And honestly, it was probably about 15 or 20 minutes. Like, it was not long at all. And then I left, and they was like, okay, give them this amount of time. I think it might have been 2 weeks. Give them 2 weeks to reach out to you with the results and blah, blah, blah. So at this time, you know, these 2 weeks, I'm really like, okay, I'm by my phone, checking my phone 24/7, answering all these random calls, because I'm like, you never freaking know. And the answer that I kind of already knew, the answer that I came to terms with is what it was. I got his paperwork saying that he does indeed have autism, and he is level 3, which means any services available for children with autism, he is eligible for. So he's level 3. I don't really know how that relates to like high function and low function or whatever. Like I'm still new to this. Like I'm still new to it, but he's level 3. So anything that's recommended or available for children with autism, my baby is eligible for. So right now, like he is in ABA therapy, which is like behavioral therapy. And it's not necessarily only for children with autism, but children with disabilities, learning disabilities, speech, stuff like that. So y'all gonna feel like I'm crazy when I say this, but once I got these results, I definitely saw a change in Dylan. Now, it was probably just him getting older and not necessarily me thinking, oh, I got the results and now I know now he's gonna act different. Like it was just the time that it happened. So mind you, this is around the time he's just now becoming a big brother. Like he's having to share his mommy with somebody else. Somebody else is getting more attention, or he has to share his toys. And this is like, this point in my freaking life was so hard for me. Like I had to learn so much patience. I had to learn how to really, I won't necessarily say deal with Dylan, but I had to learn how to teach him. Like I was learning him. I was learning him while also learning a newborn baby and learning how to be a freaking mother to 2 children. Like I'm telling you, Dylan was only 3. I was still considered a new mom, and I added another baby to the equation. Like it was hard. It was definitely hard. Definitely a hard time in my life. A lot of times I felt like I was alone because I was stuck in the house with both of them. Like when one cried, the other cried. Even to this day, they still do me like that. They still tag team cry. Like if I'm holding one, to this day, if I'm holding Dominic, Dylan will come sit in my lap. If I'm holding Dylan, Dominic will scream and cry to me just to get to me. Like I said, at this point in my life, like I was the most down. Like I was never outside of pajamas and a bonnet. Like that's all I had going. I wasn't like I was down bad. I was so sad. Of course, postpartum depression. I experienced it with Dylan. I experienced it even harder with Dominic. So that's another, we're not even gonna get into that. Cause like I said, I'm not even trying to get too emotional about the whole situation, whatever. But Dylan's behaviors definitely changed. He had to learn how to share his toys. He had to learn how to share his mom. He had to learn how to share his grandma. Like he was not trying to do none of that. So he also had to learn how to adjust to therapy. So Dylan started ABA therapy. That wait list was also a couple of months out, but he was able to go ahead and get in. Mind you, Dylan has never been to daycare. He's never been babysat. He's never really spent the night anywhere. Like he's always been up under me. Like I used to work from home with my baby, nursing him the whole time. So like that lets you know how much time he didn't get apart from me. He was in special education pre-K for like a month and some change. That is because he aged out of the program that he was in when he was taking speech. And I was waiting to hear back from therapy. So it was like a month and some change. But he was only there for 2.5 hours. And this was a big step. This was a really, really big step. But they evaluate him to see how many hours he would need or what level he's on and what class to put him in and things like that. So he actually got approved for 6 hours a day, 5 days a week. I was like, Dylan has never been away from me for this long, Monday through Friday. Like he struggled so bad with therapy. He struggled so bad. He cried every single day. He never wanted to go. Even to this day, he still doesn't like to go to therapy. Like he can tell by which way I turn out in the neighborhood, or when I get on the expressway, he can tell where we're going. He'd be like, no, that way, no, that way. I don't want school. So yeah, that was so hard. Like he would cry and I would literally have to leave him. Like I said, that time was very, very, very emotional for me and for him. Like I was expecting big boy things out of him, things that he's never done before. He was gonna have to go to this place and learn all these new people, not have me to comfort him. Like, it was a lot. And I'm definitely proud of him. Like, I am super proud of him. I'm super proud of me. This whole journey, we have had each other's back, and he's done really good. Like, I cannot complain. When people ask me about, is it hard being autism mom? Overall, I always say no. But it definitely has its challenges. It definitely makes me emotional, but it's teaching me patience. It's teaching me how to be accepting of people who are not like me, because I've never been judgmental to like people with disabilities or anything like that. But now it's totally different. Like, now if I go places, or like, okay, boom, let me give you an example. So, you know, if you're in the grocery store, you hear a baby cry, like, the average person to get irritated. The average person be like, dang, why that baby crying? Or they need to shut that baby up, blase, blase. Me, I'm already knowing what could potentially be happening, because Dylan, he will cry in the grocery store. If he can't have what he wants, he'll cry. Or if it's too loud in there, he'll cry. Like, it's so many different things that could possibly be happening that I don't judge anybody's situation, especially when it comes to their kids. I do not judge. So him having autism has definitely changed me as a person. Like, I have much more patience for different situations. I have a different outlook on what's going on. So this whole journey it's been challenging, but the challenges have rewards. Let me just say that. I'm able to see him change in so many ways. Like, Dylan has made so many improvements. Dylan can hold a freaking conversation with you. Dylan will say, "Mommy, what you doing?" Like, this, and he hasn't even been in therapy for a year yet. So him being in therapy, like, honestly, it was the best decision I've ever made, because I was very skeptical about it, because they offer services where the therapist can come to your house and see them. But I was like, you know, he's never been in daycare. He's never been around children his age. So let's do this. Let me try this. Because the pediatrician used to say that when children aren't where they're supposed to be speech-wise, you know, having them around other kids does help that. So I've always kept that in the back of my head. So I'm like, yeah, therapy is the way to go. It was a tough decision. I was calling everybody. I was texting everybody, like, what should I do? And, you know, everybody was pretty much saying, you know, you got to do what's best for you and what's best for him. So I really had to think on it, but I have no regrets about putting him in therapy, like, none whatsoever. People have mixed reviews about ABA therapy, but I am 100% behind it. Like, Dylan has changed. He's made so many improvements. He's actually about to be potty trained. Like I said, ABA therapy has definitely been one of the best decisions I've made for him. And he's learning and improving, and he'll be ready for school soon. So honestly, it does feel good to get this story out. Like, I tell the story pretty often, but just being able to reflect on all the decisions that I've made when it comes to him, or just being able to reflect on how he went from yelling and screaming to communicate versus actually using his words, like, just really saying and telling a story and replaying it makes me feel good. It makes me feel good, and it makes me really see the success in him, or the improvements in him. So I've always been that parent that if something is different about them, or something is different about the way they think or the way they learn, like, I'm trying to give my kids all the tools they can possibly have to be successful. Like, I'm not in denial. I'm not trying to shut nobody out. If it's something that somebody else is picking up on, and something that I'm also picking up on, like, we just gonna go ahead and tackle the problem. Like, I'm definitely all for giving them all the tools to be successful. And that even now, like, even though Dominic is only 1 year old, he's 13 months, he is also showing signs of autism. Like, he does the hand flapping. He does this thing where he rotates his ankle in a complete circle, and he'll just do it back to back to back. So, I mean, it's not that many signs, because, of course, he's young, but I have pointed him out to their pediatrician, and she said when he's 18 months, we'll just go ahead and get him evaluated as well, because, like I said, it is common for if one child to have it, another child to have it, and then he is showing a couple of those signs as far as speech, like he's not really saying anything, and he should be saying more than he is at his age. But we'll cross that road when we get to it. But let me just go ahead and end here. I enjoyed making this video. I enjoyed telling this story. I hope this video has helped anybody who's looking for red flags in their child, or anybody who wants to hear a story that they relate to, or anybody who's going through any part of my journey that I just explained. Thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Bye.